I, 34 have spent the last 8 years building a life I thought was a partnership. I work as a senior project manager for a high-end construction firm. It's a grueling job, 60-hour weeks, and enough stress to turn a man's hair gray before 40. But I did it for us. My wife, 32F, hasn't worked in 5 years. She said she wanted to focus on her creative passions, which mostly involved expensive pottery classes, a lifestyle blog with 12 followers, and spending my bonuses on aesthetic furniture we didn't need. The conflict didn't start with a bang. It started with a sigh. A few months ago, I came home at 8 p.m. after a day of dealing with a structural failure on a job site. The house was spotless, but the kitchen was cold. No dinner. My wife was sitting on our $4,000 Italian leather sofa, sipping wine, staring at her phone. She didn't even look up. She told me she was bored and that everything was suffocating. She looked me in the eyes and said, "I deserve better than this boring life with you." Usually, I would apologize or promise a vacation. But that night, I just felt done. I told her she was absolutely right and that she should be free to find that spark without me. She actually smirked, thinking she'd won a massive guilt trip shopping spree. She told me she'd call a lawyer and that I shouldn't expect to keep the house or the accounts. I just nodded. What she didn't know was the actual state of our finances. She saw the house and the cars, but she didn't see the massive home equity line of credit I'd taken out to cover her failed boutique business venture 2 years ago. She didn't see the private loans I'd juggled to keep us afloat while she insisted on maintaining appearances. I went to see a divorce attorney named Marcus. I laid it all out. The debt, the spending, and most importantly, the prenuptial agreement she had signed 8 years ago and completely forgotten about. That prenup was a lifesaver. It stated that any debt incurred by a spouse for individual business ventures remained the sole responsibility of that spouse. Her boutique was $150,000 of red ink in her name only, which I had been paying off from my salary. When I got home, she was packing for a spa weekend. I told her I was moving out and handed her a folder. It wasn't a settlement. It was a rental application for a 400-square-foot studio apartment in a rough part of town. I told her I stopped paying the HELOC and the personal loans that day. Since they were in her name, she was on the hook. Between the mortgage and the liens, the house had zero equity. We were $200,000 in the hole, and thanks to the prenup, that debt was largely hers to deal with. The frantic phone calls started almost immediately, but I didn't pick up. I moved into a corporate suite and finally got some sleep. Her lawyer reached out claiming financial abuse because I cut off the credit cards, but Marcus just laughed. We found out she was already trying to sell the Italian furniture and her leased Lexus. Selling encumbered assets during a divorce is a huge legal mistake, and I let her keep digging that hole. I went back to the house a week later to get my tools. The place was a mess. She was there with her sister, drinking wine in the middle of the afternoon. She bragged about selling the sofa for $8,000 to pay a lawyer. I reminded her that the sofa was collateral for the bank loan she now owed. Then she dropped the big one. She claimed she was pregnant. I stopped dead. We hadn't been intimate in 4 months because she was too emotionally exhausted by my presence. I told her that was a miracle because I'd had a vasectomy 18 months ago. I even had the follow-up lab results showing a 0 sperm count. Her face went pale, and her sister looked genuinely confused. My wife ended up screaming and throwing a wine glass at me as I walked out. I told her the foreclosure notice would be there by Friday because I'd stopped paying the mortgage the moment she told me she deserved better. But the real kicker came from my private investigator. While I was at work, she had been funneling my money into a private account to bankroll a lifestyle coach in Malibu. Even worse, she had forged my signature on a $50,000 business loan while I was away on a job site in Chicago. That's bank fraud, a straight-up felony. A few days later, her lawyer called Marcus, sounding totally defeated. The bank had served the foreclosure papers, and the Lexus had been repossessed. She was sitting in a dark house with no power, asking if I'd reconsider the terms. She wanted a $100,000 lump sum to walk away. We met at the house. It was freezing inside. I showed her the photos of her and the coach in Malibu and the evidence of the forged signature. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. I told them there was no money and no debt sharing. She would take the debt she created, or I would take the forgery evidence to the police. Her lawyer pulled her aside and told her she had no defense and was looking at prison time if I pressed charges. She was shaking with rage, but she signed the confession of judgment and the divorce decree right there. The final moment happened on the sidewalk 2 days later. I was there to hand the keys to the bank representative when her coach pulled up in a beat-up sedan. He wasn't there to rescue her. He was there to yell about a condo security deposit that had been clawed back. When he realized she had no more money, he just drove off and left her standing there. She saw me and called me a sociopath, claiming I ruined everything. I told her I didn't plan for her to cheat or forge my name. I just stopped cleaning up her messes. She threatened to tell a judge she signed under duress, but I pointed out her own lawyer had already quit because her retainer check bounced. I watched the bank rep start the paperwork to seize the house. My phone buzzed with a notification that my full paycheck had cleared. No more boutique bills, no more coach payments, no more nonsense. I drove to a quiet diner, had a coffee, and read a book in total peace. She wanted a life with more spark, and she got it. The bridge is burnt, the house is gone, and she's starting over in that studio apartment.
Me?
I'm enjoying being boring and finally, legally free. If you enjoyed seeing a boring guy turn into a legal wrecking ball, subscribe to see who else tries to trade a gold mine for a handful of dirt.